Don't know why the night is in the way. In this video, we're going to build a plastic Land Raider Spartan. So, welcome again to yet another episode of the Horus Heresy boxed set building and painting log diary video series. And as yet, you can see we still haven't come up with a decent name for it. I think we're now on to like episode 6. We've built some Space Marines, we've built some Terminators, we built a Praetor, we built a Dreadnought. So this must be episode 5 then. Okay, now, keen-eyed viewers among you will know that the Spartan is the final kit to build from the Age of Darkness Horus Heresy boxed set. So that means after this one there'll be no more build videos. For the boxed set anyway, we'll probably do some more for some other kits and releases that come out down the road. Anyway, that's enough waffle, let's jump in and have a look. Okay, so here we are again. It's another build video, and here we have the Land Raider Spartan sprues. We can tell it's the Spartan as it has the Land Raider Spartan parts on them. Now, I always like to have a brief nose through of the manual just to make sure there's no hard or awkward sections coming up. It looks to be pretty straightforward, which is good. So let's get our assembly equipment together. I have my clippers and a knife. Hang on, that's not Andy. This is a different knife. Very strange. And my three Tamiya glues. I appear to have found another one somewhere. So it turns out that Andy the knife has multiplied somehow. I seem to have acquired another Stanley knife, and again I have no idea where this one comes from. Okay, so let's get the first pieces off the sprue. I'm only going to show you clipping things off the sprue once. I feel you get the gist after a few seconds. So our first 3 parts are what appear to be the side of the hull. Nice big chunky parts. Now, it's always a good idea to clean the parts up. I use a combination of knife work and files. Again, I'm only going to show you this once. Assume I do it at each stage with each piece. Here you can see all the parts cleaned up and ready for assembly. Look how crisp and clean they are. Lovely. Using some of the Tamiya thin glue, I glue the pieces together. There's a couple of lips holding the pieces together. I think the correct term is actually a tab. When those are all glued together, it looks a bit like this. The glossy pieces you can see are where the glue has dried. Hopefully it won't show up at the painting stage. Our next parts are these. These look like more hull parts to me. Put those together and we have this, a plastic horseshoe. Well, that's what it looks like to me. I'm not sure it would work that well on a horse though. More hull parts up next, and I've a feeling these will look similar to the last part when assembled. And they do. Another plastic horseshoe. We have a pair of them now. Next up, it's a door and a flap of sorts. I'm not sure what it is. It might be some sort of mudguard. When I was a boy, we used to call them crud catchers. To hold all my pieces together at assembly, I sometimes use elastic bands. You can also use clamps, or maybe even hair bands. Or even your hands if you fancy standing there for an hour. I don't. You can see here, the door has not been glued on. I want to paint that separately. I don't have any specific painting plans yet for the door, but if I think of something later, at least I'm prepared, and for some reason I lisped. You also have to do all these steps again for the other side of the hull. I've already done it for you, Blue Peter style. I think the phrase is, here's one I made earlier. Do I get a Blue Peter badge now? I always wanted one of those. So these Blue Peter badges, I don't know why I just picked up Toad. He's definitely nothing to do... Bye! He's definitely nothing to do with Blue Peter. You wore them on your t-shirt, and sometimes when you entered competitions through the Blue Peter TV show, some of you may have never heard of it. It is a English TV show from back in the day. I don't even know if it's still on anymore, but who cares? Anyway, you would enter a competition or something, and if you were a runner-up, you might get a Blue Peter badge. Now, they advertised them as giving you free entrance to attractions and tourist places and the like, but I don't think I've ever met anyone who ever won one, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone who looks like they've won one and used it. So I think they might have been a made-up myth or a lie on behalf of the BBC. If you do know anyone who's won a Blue Peter badge, or if you've won one yourself, let us all know in the comments below what the deal with them is. Alright, so these appear to be pieces for the foyer of the Spartan. Yes, again, I've forgotten the proper term for it. Now, the instructions say to glue these side pieces together. But how? I've got a lot of movement in mine. I think I'm going to glue them together later when I can line them up with the other bits to be sure. Next up we have parts for what look like decking. Maybe we're making a nice garden area. No, it's the inside of the foyer again, but there's some scary looking gaps in this. I do hope it's assembled correctly. Next up is what looks like a lid of sorts. I wonder where this goes. Okay, so I have to admit I panicked here, thinking I glued something together wrong. It turns out I just had the lid on upside down. It's interior detail, not exterior. Panic over. A nice big chunky part up next, and I do have to say I like this one, and I reckon it's the roof. Using my rubber bands, I glued the roof to the foyer, and no, I still haven't remembered the correct name. Next up, it's a plastic Rolo, and I haven't eaten Rolos in a long time. I think we need to do something about that. I've got an idea. Okay, I couldn't resist. I've just popped down to the shop and bought a packet of Rolos. Now, I thought the wrapper was black, but it's now brown and yellow. Maybe I'm thinking of Mars bars. Anyway, let's crack one open and see what they taste like. I think I've opened it upside down. So they're a lot softer than I remember. Thought they were chewier than that. Still quite nice, but I don't think I'll be buying another packet anytime soon. Do you love anyone enough to give them your last Rolo? Have mine. You can have the whole pack. Alright, so I'm supposed to glue the Rolo turret in, but I'm not going to do this. I want to be able to swap the weapons out, so we're going to come back to this later. We have all these teeny tiny parts next. They would be very easy to lose. Be careful. What even are they? Ah, they go on the hatch. Again, I'm not gluing this hatch ring in. We want to be able to swap that out as well. It's the engine vent area next, and the ridges of these sound like one of those wooden fish instruments. Epic. Stick those bits together and we have this right-angled piece. I'm still scared of some of these big gaps. Are they supposed to be there? Let's move on. We assemble the foyer parts now, and I can finally glue those sides in the right place because they don't wiggle around anymore. Here are our next parts, a selection of doors from around the globe. I say the globe, but I mean the sprues, really. Here we can see how the doors to the foyer open. Interestingly, the old Land Raider had a mechanism that linked them together so they would open at the same time, and they've gotten rid of that, I see. To be fair, it didn't work that brilliantly. Again, when assembling the foyer, I used the elastic bands again to keep things nice and snug while they dried. Seems I need some more elastic bands. I'm down to my last 2 or 3. It's another part of the engine now, and I think this is the exhaust covers or something. It probably has a proper name, but I can't be asked to Google it. We stick these on the top of the other top panel, and we have a 1980s looking robot face. Johnny 4 at your door. I do miss Short Circuit. Whatever happened to Short Circuit, eh? It was a big deal when I was a lad in the 80s. Everyone saw Short Circuit 1. Everyone saw Short Circuit 2. Even my mum would jump up and say, "Johnny 5 is alive." And we'd be like, "No, mother. It's not cool." Was Steve Guttenberg in the sequel? I think we might have to Google that later. Perhaps it's time for a reboot. What do you guys think? Some more of those exhaust covers up next, and again I still don't know the proper name. Stick those on and the rear is finished, well, almost apart from the actual exhausts. And here they are, all in nice little parts for assembly. Stick those together and we have 4 little exhausts, but I'm not a fan of these glue join lines though. I don't like halved pipes. Can this not be designed out by now? What is this, 2002? Each piece has its own specific hole to go on. There's a little shape on the bottom to help sort them out, a bit like one of those baby's shape sorting toys. I then spent a bit of time trying to sort out those join lines. I stuck them in this big blob of blue tack to make them easier to handle. Hopefully they come out okay. This appears to be some sort of panel that the exhausts attach to. And it is. Again, it looks like the panel is giving us the finger. Either that, or he wants to fight. Put 'em up! Put 'em up! Stick all those parts together and you have this. A big, fat, chunky wodge. We can't have much left to do now, surely. Now, as some of you know, we are moving house shortly. And while we waited for deliveries to the new house, we played a little bit of Super Mario World. Wyatt kept trying to catch Mario. Leave that TV screen alone. I think we are assembling the sponsons next. These hold the weapons on the side. Oh dear, we appear to have spilt our thin cement. You can see it soaking into my tabletop paper covering thing. At least it's not Nuln Oil. Amusingly, a hairdryer dries that out super quick. I think I need to make a glue holder next, although I've no idea how I knocked it over. It's pretty solid, to be honest. Alright, crisis averted. Here's the sponson assembled. Again, I left the armour plates off for painting later. It's the quad las cannons next. And again, when I was a lad, las cannons were always my favourite weapon in the game. Nowadays it's probably the conversion beamer. Stick those bits together and you have these. Freem indeed. 10 internet cookies if you get that reference. So it turns out there's another set of these to build. Be careful with the little barrel ends, they are very small. We now have 2 pairs of 2 las cannons, all assembled. I assume we can stick these together now. So there's a tiny bit to attach next, but it has a weird symbol next to it in the instructions. I've never seen it before. I wonder what that means. Oh, it's just a detail view. I'm not sure I needed that. Okay, so this next part, some sort of lens, is absolutely tiny. We better be very careful here. Look at the size of these. If one of these falls off the table, it's gone. Now, when it comes to losing parts, I once lost a small piece under my table, and I thought it had literally vanished into thin air. I actually thought it had just disappeared because I hunted everywhere. But it turns out It was under my chair wheel and it got inside the mechanism. Let me show you. See in there, it got in that mechanism somehow. So if you ever have a part which completely disappears, check in your wheel mechanisms. Pwah, the dust coming out of there. Ow! It's crushed my toe. So with the assistance of a pair of tweezers, we managed to stick them in, and I have to admit it wasn't as scary as I feared. There's nothing to fear except fear itself. Who even said that? Paul Atreides? So being an idiot, I've only assembled one sponson mount. It turns out there's a pair. I really should have known that. More tiny little bits. These ones are the pivot for the las cannons. Don't lose these. This is the top of the pivot. It has a little lens on it. It kinda reminds me of something. It's this, Rob the Robot. I always wanted one of these as a youngster. I remember the TV ads when I was at middle school. Word on the street is, it was actually pretty poor. Maybe I had a lucky escape. Still looks good though. So with the pivots in, it looks a bit like this. However, again, I want to paint these separately, so I'm going to leave them off. So interestingly, whilst looking at this Rolo pack, which I bought for this video, it says on here, there's a hashtag last Rolo, but underneath that, next to the Nestle logo, it says, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Paul. If you are enjoying the content here on the channel, then please consider joining the Patreon, the link to which is in the description below or up here somewhere. More little fiddly bits. Now, my video clip here reminds me of someone playing that Operation game. You know, the game where you touch the guy's bone with your tweezers. I sucked at it. I'm also leaving these off for painting later. A barn door up next. It's a big panel with a couple of little panels. I assume they stick to the sides. Yes, they do. I think this is the bottom of the tank. We attach the bottom to the rear. I had a little gap here as these bits were hard to get together due to the sizes of them. I tidied it up and we moved on. Now we are supposed to join our big sub-assemblies next, but I feel it's best to let the previous steps dry first though. I gave those assemblies a good hour to dry and then put them together. It all went together quite solid, no issues to report. So the manual says it's time to get back on track. Get it? Tracks? I'm leaving these off to paint later too. I feel at this stage I've left half the parts off the kit. You can see here how the sponsons attach. They sort of twist into the socket. I find they are a little loose and don't really touch the sides. I prefer my holes a bit tighter, to be honest. We were supposed to glue the sides of the hull on next, but I want to magnetise all these weapon options and we might need access to the insides. I was going to magnetise these hull mounted weapons, but I was really unhappy with how they were a bit floppy. I feel they might need mounting on some sort of plate instead in the future. I have to admit I wrecked those las cannons fiddling with those, so I stuck the heavy bolters on instead. Not everything goes to plan. I'll think of something else later. Next up, we need the parts to make the turret hatch. There's only one. I was convinced there was going to be two. I think that's called the Mandela effect. Put those pieces together and you have this hatch. Now it's time to magnetise it. You can see it's supposed to mount on the top here, along with the hull-mounted Rolo weapons. Let's see what we can do this time. I began by gluing a piece of sprue inside the hatch hole. Good job we left those hull sides off, eh? Then I added some plasticard to the inside of the hatch and glued a pair of magnets to the parts. Make sure you get your polarity right or it will eject the hatch. It fits with a satisfying slap.
To magnify the Rolo guns, I had to put magnets inside the gun mount. I will need a spare one of these later so I can swap them out. I wonder how much these are on the bits market. Okay, so now it's pretty much safe to attach those hull sides. Let's hope there's no big gaps. To ensure we don't get any big gaps, we use our trusty elastic bands again. When that was all glued together, I also wicked some glue down into the joins, just to make sure the wheels don't fall off going down the road. When I say wheels, I mean tracks, and when I say road, I mean in-game.
Now, my here Spartan, with the lovely opening doors, came from the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness boxed set. But if you do wish to get your own and you don't want to buy a whole box set to get it, you can now buy it separately. And the affiliate link to get your own, if you so wish, is up here somewhere. I've also stuck one in the link below. Go and have a looky.
And here it is, the Land Raider Spartan. It's a wonderful model kit with lots and lots of great options. Some are easy to magnetise and some not so much. Now, the next time you see this Spartan, it should be in the painting videos, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think I have finally settled on a paint scheme, but I have to sleep before then, so it's possible I will still change my mind.
So, the Land Raider Spartan, the plastic Land Raider Spartan, what did you think of that? Do you prefer this new plastic version, or do you prefer the old resin version of the Spartan? Have you built your Horus Heresy boxed set yet? If so, have you built the Spartan? What did you think of the build? Did you find it easy? Did you find it hard? Do you think it's worth painting a tank like this in sub-assemblies, such as with the tracks and all the extra hatches and doors and whatnot? Or do you think it's easier just to paint it all in one go and stick the lot together? We'll deal with that later. So now we've finished the build, I think the next part of our video series is going to be basing. If you do want to see some more videos in this Horus Heresy building and painting hobby diary project log, I know you do, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. As always, thank you very much for watching, and always remember to drill your barrels.